Can anybody hear me? Did David mute me again
Yeah.
because he doesn't like listening to me?
Well, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode of The Last of Us. I kind of don't. Okay. Do you want me to just go first and you can tell me how you felt?
Yeah,
Okay. So
go ahead.
it's kind of a giveaway if you're watching the live stream, but this kind of just. Why was this only half of the story? Like, it was all this setup and build up, and that was kind of it. Like, there wasn't. It was very weird. I felt like
Yeah, right.
the rug got pulled out from underneath me a little bit, if that makes sense. And I'm still thinking about this episode quite a bit. I am slightly above lukewarm on this show so far. Like, I'm sitting at around like a 6, which I don't know if by the way that I've talked about the show, if that's like surprising anyone, but it seems fair to me for where we are right now, because there are a lot of things that I genuinely like about this show.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of stuff that I'm really frustrated with. And some of it is just subjective creative decisions. Some people are totally cool with the direction, like with episode 3. Some people are totally cool, that I respect, are totally cool with the direction they took with that. Some people hate it way more than I did. And I'm kind of here like, I don't know, like I liked this, wasn't really happy with the ending. A little above that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of sitting at a 6 right now with the show. And oh man, I heard a couple things about where it's going, and I'm just like, oh man, we've talked about this hypothetical sort of like cliff, and we kind of know where it's at, but we're still sort of in the dark about like if it'll drop before that, or we have to wait till the second season, or if the second season will even go into the kind of material from The Last of Us Part 2. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding that, and it's really hard to gauge the further we get into this, because they keep adding stuff that was never a part of the game. Sometimes it's like, all right, and then other times I'm like, I don't know if I'm into this, or like, why are we doing this? But what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was pretty good.
Sure.
I say,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. There's things I like about it, things I, kind of question or don't really care for. I actually went back and watched I watched the first 2 episodes. I didn't go back and watch the third one again because I didn't see the point. I mean, it's just, again, my review stands for itself for last week. It's just a tangent. It doesn't have anything to do with the plot. I already know that the only main thing that really had to do with the plot is that, okay, Joel gets a truck and supplies, and then they go. And, I think the pacing is right. And I think, like, even that was one of the main problems with The Walking Dead, is that The Walking Dead would do these vignettes of characters,
Yeah.
albeit theirs seemed to make a little bit more sense than this one did with The Last of Us. We can only go off of the one. But I mean, watching the show back and then last night's episode, it's just like it's missing that kind of charm, spark, whatever you want to say, that like draws you in. Like, I'm not fully immersed into the story. I know I'm watching a TV show. Whereas there's been like All Quiet on the Western Front, man, I was just felt like I was in that movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or House of the Dragon, like I was there, like loving this along the way. And I think part of it has been Ellie. I don't know if that's Bella Ramsey's performance mixed in with the writing. I would have to say it's more so the side of the writing. Even kind of how the Joel's character in this, and not Pedro Pascal's performance, but how they're wanting Pedro to act in it.
Yeah.
And even though there's these, the writing's decent, it's good, the production and set design and cinematography is really, really good. But there's just this, there's a few things missing to pull me into this. Again, it's not bad, but I think I'm coming back down to more of your level. I think more so than just it being above average. I would say that it's good, right? It's fine. You know, it's
Yeah.
not anything for me to write home about yet. And we'll get into that more in this
Sure,
episode,
sure.
actually. But again, I
It's
thought
still
this
a little
episode was
early.
pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's quite a bit I like about it, but then they
I think
just
it's the pacing. I think the pacing is probably the biggest issue for me in this.
yeah.
Is it just it's there's times where it seems not fast enough and times where it seems not slow enough.
Yeah,
too.
I was gonna say because, and we'll get into we'll kind of get into it, but I agree, and there's a cut. It's weird because we get sort of this build up to this really intense stuff in this episode, which I thought was great. I think the first like 10, 15 minutes, I'm not exactly sure what the time code was, but and I'll be able to tell you as we kind of go along. But it builds up and it ramps up and you think, oh man, like this is gonna, they're gonna be like hunted down and they're gonna have to be surviving. And then this is why I said this episode, and maybe it does it more than once, but it just like, it's almost like you're in stop and go traffic might be a good way to explain it, where it's like, oh, let's build up, and then they slam on the brakes so hard because they felt the need to give insane characterization to the leader of this group of people in the city.
The soccer mom.
Yeah, so we'll get to that.
It looked like she could listen. She just did not portray to me that she was a leader. Maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe they want to do that purposefully. Sure. But man,
I will fully,
the only thing she looks like she could lead is the local PTA.
Yeah, I'll hold off like full judgment on that until we see the next episode.
Yeah.
But I was not convinced by her, and we'll get into it because there's a couple things within that I was just like, why? It pulls one of the I'm an evil baddie and I need to show you that I'm an evil baddie like tropes that I hate so much, because they can't, like, the bad guy will just throw out all logic so that the story can show you how bad they are. I'm just gonna go and shoot and kill the doctor. I hate it so much, dude. I just that kind of stuff. I was like, why have people not learned from this?
That's dumb. Why would you shoot the probably only doctor in your town?
Yeah. All right. So, the episode pretty much opens up with Ellie looking at her fancy new gun that she's acquired. I need to mute this. And it's fine for the most part. I'm not gonna get like super nitpicky, even though I don't mind getting nitpicky. I'm not gonna get real nitpicky about the way she handles this thing. I'll just say people need to remember she's 14. I have helped women in the past learn how to properly handle a firearm, and it's a lot more difficult than they make it out for her. And I know they said like that you could make the argument because she talks about later on in the episode how it's not the first time she's like killed somebody, even though technically she didn't do it this time. We'll get there. But that being said, I thought that I think for the most part it's fine. They're just kind of trying to set up how, she's got it. And I didn't
really mind how she was handling it because she, I was just assuming she's never handled one before.
Yeah.
And she's teaching herself, so it makes sense. There's some, there's going to be some bad gun safety involved in that,
Yeah.
There's quite a few that bothered me. I'm like, kids, do not do this.
I like so far, this is the best episode of Ellie and Joel together.
Yes, this was.
And it's why I lean just a little bit more, and I think this is kind of what you were getting at before, is that I lean a little more on the writing. I still am not really sure that Bella Ramsey was the best cast for this.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't seem that way.
I don't like what they're doing with Ellie's writing. It's so weird that they have it's like so drastically different. She has these unbelievably serious moments, and then she's like goofing around and telling punny jokes. And it's so, there's such a big contrast, and it doesn't always seem to me that it's the exact same character. So
I think I guess they're trying to show that progression in her and Joel, but specifically her becoming more endearing rather than this just annoying little kid. And how you've explained it to me, how Ellie is from the game, she's way more endearing, more juvenile in the sense of she's more kid-like rather than insufferable and obnoxious and just rebellious.
There's a sense of wonder to her character, which is why this episode worked better for me, because you see, and I mentioned this when we started reviewing this. I'm very biased towards this show. It's impossible for me not to be, because I think that the way they wrote Ellie in the game, in particular, though I would probably make the argument for at least every character that we've met so far. The Bill one is a little more complicated, but for Ellie, let's just say Ellie and Joel, because they are the two main characters. I think they are better written in the game. If you are going to compare and contrast the two of them, like the pair of them in the game versus the pair of them on the show, it's not a competition for me.
Yeah.
It just
I think
isn't.
the way that you've described how, like, when we talked about episode 1, I thought about that more, and it seemed, I'm like, oh yeah, that would have been a way better opening had they just copied the games. And then, again, albeit I understand why they focus more on Sarah. And then when you explain to me, and
I'm willing to concede. I'm willing to concede the episode 1 opening too. It's like that one in particular. I'm like, okay, fair enough. They kind of want to spend a little more time with her before you go through this thing.
I think the main hiccup is what they did in episode 3. I think they should have just, what you said, copied the game to where you get introduced to Bill through Joel and Ellie having to get, through the infected, Bill's traps and things like that. And it would just, make everything seem more paced better.
Yeah.
Rather than just, kind of slow and, dramatic.
It's starting to feel like the infected are a backdrop in this, isn't it?
It is starting to feel that way. There's 2 episodes now with no infected.
Basically,
so I'm assuming,
basically none. There's a couple. There's a couple in episode 3, because remember he like kills the one and he's like, haha, they fall for it every time or whatever.
But essentially none, and that they're not really a threat. And I'm assuming that in this next episode, I mean, I just don't understand why they did this episode the way they did it. It really does seem like they pulled the rug out from underneath us in the sense of no kind of, I don't know, climax to the episode. I mean, I know you get the cliffhanger with Henry and, his son or whatnot, but
his brother,
brother, whatever.
Yeah.
But
that's totally.
I get it. They got to
totally
make it 9 or 10 episodes. I get it.
I guess I don't. The last one was an hour and 20 minutes. Why couldn't you have just combined 3 and 4?
I feel like I'm really wanting to like this show more than what it is. You know what I mean?
I
like it. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like it. But I'm talking about I want it to be, near that House of the Dragon level, and it's just not.
Yeah.
It's more of like season 2 Walking Dead to me. I don't know. I wouldn't even say that.
I don't know if it's quite that bad. I think that
it's not that bad. I don't think it's bad.
Yeah.
I thought like season 2 of The Walking Dead was good, just not like what season 1 was. And then season 3 I thought is where it fell off the map. So maybe I have that wrong.
A lot of this car ride is almost directly from the game. Like she opens up Bill's magazine. It's so funny because like this is the kind of stuff that for me it's kind of that warm feeling of like, and it's probably just there to be like, well, we have to give stuff to, like, they do kind of understand on some level that they need to give the people who are fans of that first game something, other than this is they're Joel and Ellie, they're going through this apocalyptic world. That's it. You should just be happy for what we give you. At least they're doing, in some cases, dude, like shot for shot, dialogue is almost taken directly out of the game. And a lot of that car ride, honestly, even some of the scenery when they're going through, headed towards, it's Kentucky in this. I think it was Pittsburgh in the game. I can't quite remember. But a lot of this, it's
Kansas City.
Kansas, is that? Yeah. Did I say Kentucky? I meant Kansas City. Yeah.
Same thing, Kentucky, Missouri. I
Yeah,
mean,
whatever.
the Midwest, you're like when the ombudsman pulls you over,
You're like,
and
where
they
am
say,
I?
"Why were you speeding?" And you say, "I'm trying to get out of whatever Midwest state you're in." It's just they all look the same. Even though
Yeah,
Missouri is technically kind of like borders on the Midwest to South.
yeah. Um,
But it was so funny to me to see. I get it. I mean, it will. But when they're like, okay, we need to pull off, and so we can avoid hunters and stuff. And when they do the pan shot of you see the car driving into the woods, it's just a whole beeline of in the field of like where the tire mark, everything
oh
was.
yeah, yeah. That's such a good point.
Where it's like I'm a raider. I'm like,
Who came through here? Yeah.
Oh man, again, that's exactly how it would be. I'm not faulting them. It's so funny, like Joel's logic, and we need to
Yeah,
veer off, which is
we
true.
we don't
But
park.
you would,
Why not park the car on the road, cover it? It's like he's basically a survivalist at this point. The dude's been through a lot. They've established that. And you're right. There are just moments where, and I guess the argument would be: is he incompetent because that's how they want him to be? To get to things later on, because that's a lot of people who are a lot more, I guess, negative about the show. That's kind of where they're at. And honestly, I feel like I'd have to get through the show and then kind of go back and
judgment.
and look for some of that stuff a little harder.
it was just one of those things for me. I'm thinking if I'm in a situation like that, and to where I know I got to drive through this field where my car is gonna, it's gonna be a direct path of leading where I am essentially.
Yeah.
And I get they show him driving through the woods in his truck and everything, pretty far away from that, but still, it's one of those things I would go back and
the lines,
kind of distort.
At the very least, the people in post could have just gotten rid of those marks. So they weren't there. I don't know if that would have been better, but at least they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, but it is more realistic, though. I mean, that's exactly what would happen. You could easily just show him, you do a 5 or 10 second clip of him saying, "I'm gonna go, fix the trail we left."
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's an easy fix. They walk into the woods rather than driving the vehicle directly into the woods.
Something like that.
Hide the car, walk into the woods, something along those lines. Yeah, and so then they do their Chef Boyardee thing. I don't know. I've seen a few people get upset about it, but I'm just like, I don't know, dude. I don't care.
That
like
makes sense.
it seems
Chef
like
Boyardee, Starbucks. I mean, it makes sense.
It's
not anything that's blatantly out from the that makes the script bad for some reason.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The cans of Chef Boyardee probably would exist. It's fine. They're just trying to build their relationship. And then they're talking about Starbucks, and you see like the Arby's signs and stuff. It worked for me because you see.
And the love sign,
oh yeah, it's the stuff you'd see on the highway.
Truck stop, the gas station. Yep.
I'm
like, not loves.
No.
I enjoyed this scene though between Ellie and I enjoyed the previous scene between Ellie and Joel with the pun part, and then I enjoyed this scene because she asked, "Can I build a fire?" And then he says, "Now why am I going to tell you no?"
Yes, I did like
because
that.
The infected? No, the infected aren't that smart. It's because of hunters or whatnot. And then she's like, "You don't want them robbing us?" And then he says, "Oh, they'll do it. They'll have a lot more on their mind than that."
Exactly, and it's actually something that I'm not real impressed with her reaction. So he says, "No, fungus isn't that smart. This is too remote for infected anyway. People. So what? What are they going to do? Rob us? They'll have way more in mind than that." And her reaction is sort of like, ugh. But I don't know if that was what they should have done. Like, she's 14. She should be freaked out.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I think they do get delve into that a bit in the next scene when she's going to sleep and she says, "Hey, no raiders are going to get us, right?"
Yeah.
And you kind of, or hunters or whatnot, people. And so you kind of get the fact that she's scared, and then Joel stands guard the entire night because he's starting to care more about her.
Yeah, and some of that works really well. Yeah, and of course we had the part earlier where he basically calls her cargo.
Yep.
Which it seems that he probably still believes that, but there is that part of him that's beginning to understand that she is like human, that there's more to this, which is important. It's important for where the show is headed. I think. To be honest, dude, there are moments where I'm like, I don't even know anymore. They might totally change up the way that this ends at this point, because they seem, the further we get through this, there's just these little deviations that make me think like, they're gonna do something different, and I'm not sure. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
He's probably gonna double down on how part 2 went from what you told me, and they're slowly deviating, correcting things to get to that point. But I mean, so far, I think what made me mad with this episode is that we should have gotten it last week. And last week's episode just shouldn't have happened.
The Bill
like that, to where at least to where it was like as long as it was, even if they still wanted to do it just on a more of a minor sense rather than an entire tangent vignette of an episode that has nothing essentially really to do with the plot, but you get a bit of both in this episode. You get a bit of both of what the last episode was and what this episode was,
Yeah.
To where at least in this episode by 4, you're having, maybe the last half, and then you're having next week's episode too. But just me.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that episode 3 should have been later. I mean, gosh, we're gonna just so you know, we're gonna get another one of those episodes later this season. The episode 3, there's another one coming after. Hang on, what are we in 4? So we had episode 7, from what I've heard, is when it's coming, and I know what it is, and I've been expecting that one. But now we're going to have 2 episodes this season that are essentially tangents from the story. And this one had like the episode with Bill been what I was expecting, episode 7 is going to be more along the lines of like, it makes sense to do this kind of story 7 episodes into a season, not 3.
Right.
From like keeping your story going. We've been talking about the pacing a little bit, and it's just kind of how it. Oh man,
I like the coffee part in this though, because I'm like, that
too.
coffee would taste bad, but probably would taste, even though it would taste bad to me now, probably in his situation it probably tastes a bit better because you haven't had it in so long, assumingly.
Yep, it would be one of those things that probably taste amazing, just to like have some sort of like memory of it.
Because when you're starving, almost everything tastes amazing.
Yeah. Though, and we'll get to it, sometimes there's some weird stuff about this being 20 years in the future of essentially an apocalypse, how well stocked up certain people are. And something else that I was thinking about too. We saw in episode 3, even after the 20 plus years that Bill and Frank are together, that a majority of Bill's weapons are still down in that basement. Joel took a bolt-action rifle.
Dude, I know. I was thinking about that. I'm like, would you take a few more weapons?
Dude, I wish I could pull up. I'm not going to, because I can't do it without totally screwing up the setup. But I wish I could pull up the shot from the end of that episode when they go down to his basement. I'm pretty sure there are quite a few capable weapons down there. And I guess, it would have been fine if it was like, if Ellie was like, oh, what about this one? And it's like, nah, the ammo's all gone or whatever. Yeah. You again, it's small little things, but it's that kind of stuff that when you realize,
especially when you see like what he had on the wall.
He took, not only did he take a bolt action rifle, but he took the most bare bones bolt action rifle. Now, I guess if you're talking about the game, the game, that is like kind of the type of gun that Joel has in the game. But the difference is that firearms and a lot of that other stuff are significantly more rare in the storyline for the game. Bullets, like the whole deal. So when Joel did that thing at the beginning of episode 3 where he puts the M4, the whatever M16, whatever it was, the automatic rifle into the floor, and he's like, yeah, there's ammo's rare for this kind of gun. And then, as we'll see soon, that's not really true. Because, like, I mean, we'll count when we get to that point, but there's like a ton of dudes carrying that exact same gun around, and so it's like
I could have sworn he had a few rifles on the wall.
He
I
did.
would have to pull up.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
He did have. He had quite a few.
And I was like, bro, why wouldn't you? The rifles would be way more, would be way better in a multi gunfight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they spent a bunch of time
Multiple attackers, I should say.
Yeah, you think that he would have taken as much ammo and at least a few of those firearms with him. I'm sure that, he gets like Joel picks up a knife in this one. It's like, you're telling me that he didn't have a knife in his house? The survivalist? It's weird, man. And it's why, I think there's an argument to be made that they very much had an agenda with that previous episode. It's not, I don't think it's as egregious as what they did with,
the Rings of Power.
Well, not the Rings of Power. I was going to say the episode 9 of House of the Dragon, where it's like they were trying to give her name's slipping my mind.
What's her name?
Yeah.
I
used to get her and Rhaenyra confused.
Yeah.
Rhaenys. Rhaenys. Yeah, I think the Rhaenys thing is still worse long term because it is unbelievably damaging to the story and that character. That is a massive writing screw up. Whereas this, it's just one of those things where it's a little annoying that he didn't. You're like, well, dude, why didn't you pick better weapons? You know what I mean? There's some other stuff too that it's little things, but it's also stuff that's like, dude, what? You're trying to survive. What are you doing? Why would you not? If these things are available, why wouldn't you give yourself the best option to get through this?
Dude had a shotgun too, double pump. I want to say. I mean, there's a lot of things, man.
Who knows? I mean, from being in that survivalist position, who knows what he could have had that he was saving up, that he held on to, that Bill specifically cared about. It's like typically people who are like that, they have favorite firearms. They have the ones that are like, I won't ever sell this for strawberries,
Right.
For the most part, appreciated this part. This is almost directly from the game. This is, by the way, this is what I was telling you why vehicles aren't necessarily the best way to travel through the world at this point.
I was waiting for them to kind of get to that point because it's like, oh, they've had pretty safe traveling so far.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, they crash, and this in particular, I think, is one of the scenes that annoys a lot of people who are fans of the game, because this is one of the moments in the game where Joel does everything within his power to protect Ellie from the people that are hunting them down.
Mm-hmm.
It's also weird to me because I'm sure you noticed this, but when they were driving through the city, there's a specific shot, I think before they even see that guy. So they ask about what happened to the quarantine zone. Oh, right here. So we see the body of burned corpses, and then the show is trying to humanize the people.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are they doing this? Do we have to? Does everybody have to be that? Oh, they're just survivors too. It's like, yeah, but you can already kind of tell what they did.
David.
It's confusing.
They had to get home the point that humans are the real monsters, not the infected.
Yeah, of course
again,
they're kind of doing
I
that.
don't necessarily mind going into that trope, right, that we've gotten so much, but I just wish it would be yes, you have to worry about humans being monsters, but still the main threat are the infected. You know what I'm saying? There's this existential threat to where maybe you have to team up these terrible people that you display some conflict, or maybe you don't, and you suffer the consequences of both parties of not teaming up together. Just something more than just you really gotta watch out for the humans because they're the real vile ones.
I also don't know why
they still use gas and they don't use solar panels.
Yeah, I don't know why though. This couldn't have just been an episode where you could just have that it's more centered on Joel and Ellie surviving, and that the people that are coming after them, you get glimpses as to why that's going on, but you don't have to give them their own
backstories.
Yeah, exactly. It's just in Ellie and Joel's eyes, these are the bad guys currently. These are the people that are trying to take everything from them and murder them. These are the people that Joel was telling Ellie in the forest probably want more than just to rob you. You know what I mean? Like, you could have just, and maybe it's too simplistic, you know? But it would have been kind of nice to have just like that real tense. And I don't know, man. Maybe we'll get that next week. They're going to it seems like they're really going to be amping up episode 5. But I don't know. This was one of those times where I really just wanted sort of that, like, give me more of the action. Like, we've had slow buildups. We've had lots of drama. We've had, you know, your romantic stuff or whatever. But it's like, we haven't gotten, like, a ton of the other side of what the Last of Us games were, which was getting into these brutal conflicts with other survivors. You know, we kind of had that with the infected, with like the runners and the clickers. We've had a little bit of that, but like, you know, we're nearly halfway through the show, and it's just kind of some of this. It's weird too, dude. Like, the game is, especially when it came out, it was pretty brutal. I mean, like, they didn't like really shy away from the violent aspects of the world that they lived in. I don't know if you've noticed it, but they kind of do in this. Go ahead. They shy away from the brutality of this world.
Yep, I think they touched on it some with particularly this scene. I enjoyed that, you know, the thread from, what was it? The little bit of Joel and Ellie we got last week, where he's telling her that sometimes you shoot and, you know, you just don't hit.
Yeah.
And you kind of had this shootout that lasted a good bit, you know, as long as it needed to last. He wasn't just automatically shooting and killing them.
Right.
But I do think you get this shot to where Ellie, you know, shoots the guy that's on top of him, the kid, looks like a, you know, really young adult. And then, you know, Joel has to kill him, and you get a bit of that brutality in that scene. But as far as it being pressed, I don't know. I think they may not show it as gruesome as they probably could, but you get elements of that, you know, even with, what was it, last episode, to where you have the towel from the baby to the Marines that the military people that shot and murdered, you know, all the rural citizens because they didn't have any room for them.
Yeah, so like we're getting glimpses of that.
Yeah, dialed back a lot.
It's so dialed. Even this
part. I would say that this part wasn't dialed.
No.
I don't think you really need.
I think it was, because they like.
Well, I haven't played the game, so I wouldn't be able to tell you.
So look. I just watched the way that this plays out, and a lot of it is just in the editing, right? So, you know, she's coming up behind the guy. She shoots, right? Mm-hmm. We don't even see the impact. The next thing that we get is him here. It's it's just. The cut for me
tamed.
It's really weird.
You get the emotional and psychological side of it without necessarily the full visual.
But it's just such an odd. Also, if in this position in real life, especially now, someone can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure, because they're using Full Metal Jacket ammo. Do you know why typically in defensive situations you don't use that, Joseph?
What's that? Isn't it just 5.56?
No. So she's probably using 9mm. I'm pretty sure they showed it at the beginning, right? But I
thought it was 5.56.
It's a full no. That's going to be in a like an AR-15.
Yeah. That's right. Sorry.
No, you're good. So typically though,
he had 9mm.
Yeah, with 9mm pistol. You're gonna use hollow points. Do you know why?
Mm-hmm. So that you don't want it to pass through the target, right?
Yes, technically Mexican in the troll room. Yeah. So what she did could have killed Joel. And I know it's a nitpick, but again, nitpicks are okay here. We're okay with themes. We're okay with subversion of expectations if it's done in a way that works well. We're also okay with nitpicks. But if she had done that in real life, there is a chance she could have killed Joel in that process or seriously injured him.
So hollow points pass through.
No, hollow points stick. That's why
the stick. That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
No,
technically
you're good.
Mexican was saying that hollow points pass through the target. My bad.
Bigger holes.
My bad. I thought I was like I could have sworn it was the opposite, but
Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, I'll let it go. Because this situation does happen in the game and it's a little bit different. She shoots the guy directly in the head, which is in that specific instance the smarter option. So, but I just
she's probably not using hollow points.
No.
The regular 9mm.
Full Metal Jacket's typically so like in this world,
when you said Full Metal Jacket, my first thought was the movie,
the FMJ. Yeah, they're just called FMJs. But they are. It's just like it's not a metal ball, but that think of it like that. And so that's going to be a lot easier to make in a world like this than trying to put together like a hollow point.
That's interesting.
Yes, Troll Room spot on with that tonight. So yeah, that was kind of one of those weird things that it's like, I guess you could say it's a technicality as far as the show's concerned, but I was kind of like, dang man, like I don't know. But yeah, I think that there's a lot that works here, but again, and again, HBO, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a company that typically does not shy away from violence, this show has a tendency to do that. And I find it odd. It's a very weird thing considering the source material for this.
Right.
That they shy away from the
brutality. What the games were.
Yeah, now again, we're early on. We could see next week's episode and I could be like, hey, remember when I said that? At least with this next episode, it's not true. That could be the case for the next episode. I don't know yet. I've just found it sort of weird. I mean, like, what's the worst thing that's happened to someone on screen in this? The guy got beat to death by Joel in the first episode?
Yeah, you have that. I mean, you do kind of have this guy screaming for his mom.
No. The worst one I would say so far is when Sarah dies. Which was surprising to me. Of all of the things, I was actually surprised that that's something they didn't shy away from. But it seems like...
Well, I don't know, the opening scene... The opening scene, the part with the neighbors and the chicks just sitting there gnawing on the old lady has turned infected and she's just sitting there gnawing on the lady.
Yeah.
That whole scene of the neighbor's house was pretty gruesome.
Sure. But while do you get what I'm saying though? I mean,
I get what you're saying.
It's just odd to me that in the first episode, everything like pre-apocalypse.
You want James Gunn to have directed this show.
He might have been able to write Ellie a little bit better, if I'm being totally honest.
Probably would have done a better job, if I'm being honest too.
But yeah, I just think it's
I'm not. So I'm not.
It's sort of weird. I mean, I know it's not Game of Thrones, but it's hard, from that aspect to not be like, this is the company that let a guy's head get popped on screen. And they cut pretty quick, but like you see it happen. Speaking of, it's the same actor.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of ironic. But it's one of those things that's like I just find it kind of odd, and it's not that I necessarily am missing it. It's just kind of a like, dang, like why every time? Yeah, like every time it seems like. Since that first episode, I guess in particular, it's like they keep shying away from some of the brutality of this, and I just don't know. And then it's going to be weird too if a lot of that is saved for like the infected. So like that's where you're seeing, more of that.
I think,
I don't know.
For me, I still see it as kind of brutal, but it's just not to the extent that you're used from the games, which I can definitely see that point of view. And to where even from my perspective, if it is to that point to the games, or even just a little bit closer to that, it kind of brings home the impact of the apocalypse. Because everything that you've told me, even about Joel, how he's not quite like himself from the games.
Yeah.
I it kind of makes more sense for him to be more. He should be more like himself from the games, more hard and rigid. But I mean, again, there are glimpses of that you do get. Not even glimpses. That exact thing you get with him, killing that guard, him killing that kid. Kind of doing what he needs to do to try to prevent Ellie from necessarily having to do it.
Yeah, I honestly, and maybe it's just a personal thing, and again, bias here. I need it to be ramped up a little bit.
Yeah.
It just kind of bugs me that it's sort of, there are just moments where it's kind of like you were saying at the beginning, where it's like how easy it was for them to just drive all the way to Kansas City as easily as they did. And so it's just things like that sometimes where it's like, all right, I'm willing to let it go because you're trying to get to the next part of the story or whatever, but it's like sometimes this seems a little too easy for them. It's just kind of the so far. And I know like Tess is gone and I need to watch, like I need to see the whole thing first to really get some of these ideas down. But the brutality thing is just something that I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it just seems like it should. They're in like a pretty. I say pretty, like they're in a really rough environment. It's like it was like I was saying, it's weird. They're in this like this town now that is essentially run by a group of like Mad Max people. They're like, okay, the apocalypse is happening. What kind of raiders do we want to be? It's like, well, we like Mad Max, so that's the direction that we'll go in.
Right.
But look at all of these guys. I'm pretty sure every single one of them has an automatic weapon. Yeah. And I get it, like Fedra exists, but it's like I don't know if
AR-15?
I don't know. It's that style.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
would
M4.
I would assume they're automatic.
Yeah.
So yes, this is your favorite favorite part of the episode.
Oh yeah. Love
what you were saying.
Got old soccer mom, PTA lady that leads them, and really this next part is really just you get some background with her, you get this doctor. Okay, yes, she finds out that, or she doesn't find out, but we get told that her brother ended up getting beat to death and exactly in that bin. Excuse me. And the doctor is the one that gave him away because he had a gun held to his head, and now she's trying to find Henry I guess because Henry is her brother, right? No. She's trying to find Henry because Henry had a part in killing her brother.
Yeah, he was beaten to death.
Yeah, and then
by was it by Henry or Fedra? Because she says, I wonder if this is the cell where my brother was beaten to death. You were wronged. I'm sorry. Henry was a snitch, right? That's how they're setting him up.
I think so. I don't really remember.
Oh yeah, when they were ratting to Fedra. So the idea is, from what I've been able to gather, is that this is relatively okay. Again, timeline thing is sort of weird with this. It seems as if them taking this area over from Fedra is somewhat new in the way they're describing this. And I don't know if you really could put it any other way, because unless Henry we might find out next week that Henry and his brother have been on the run for like a while.
Right.
But that's at least from this first episode that seems to be the case, which again, it's not the same as the game. Henry and his brother were just trying to survive, like Joel and Ellie. That was sort of part of what they were trying to do, is like, hey, look, here's two people who are kind of exactly like us. Like that's what they were trying to do with that, and so who knows if that's going to be the same. But
basically, all this next sequence, you could say, boils down to is she ends up killing the doctor because they gotta show how gruesome she is, and then they go looking for Henry and also for, um, Joel and Ellie, even though they don't know it's them. And then
let's not completely just run past this whole doctor situation.
Okay. Yeah, she kills the only doctor.
Yeah, so
supposedly in the city.
Two guys
would be very vital to have.
Exactly. So the two guys that Joel kills,
in Apocalypse.
Yeah, the two guys that Joel kills are on the ground. You look, all these other men are around her, right? They're about to go hunt down these people who took out two of their men.
Yep.
She says, maybe. Wait, hang on. Will he survive? What if I had a doctor? Which is a weird thing to say because you would think they'd know about the doctor, right? There's no chance. I'm sorry. She's
that
so
was weird when she said that. What about if I had a doctor? Like, wouldn't we all understand that we have a doctor here or not?
Yeah, she's so upset about the situation, she just takes it out on the doctor. And this is what I was saying earlier on, where it's a situation of, for some reason, people who write villains love to do this thing where you have to randomly kill someone, and a lot of the time that person could be important to them, right? Like, this guy has no power. Like, he can't really do anything at this point. He could just be...
It just seems contrived.
Yeah, he could be the doctor and just be like, dang, if I do anything else, like, she's going to kill me. So I better just stay in line, right? Like, that does...
Right.
That has a tendency to work in some situations. Yeah, and again, he's a doctor. He could be useful to keeping her men alive, to, like, treating them, do all this stuff. Doesn't seem like there's another doctor around. Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was definitely weird.
I'll say this, though. I'll be interested to know if this has any foreshadowing to it. I'm not going to say anything else. But
yeah, that will be interesting to see.
It just clicked in my head that I was like, oh, no, what are they doing here? Maybe
They're setting something up, right?
I'm not going to say yes because I don't know. At this point, I have no idea how they're going to handle the rest of the show.
I got kind of this is the part where I really got bored in the episode, and the bit that I didn't really care for. I mean, I get they're trying to make it tense and the stakes, and Joel and Ellie are hiding. They're out looking for them and Henry, and then they go to one of the buildings. She does with her little security guard, and that's when you see kind of the hole, and not the hole, but the collapse of the cement fault. Coming, and I guess it's the fungus is about to erupt or something.
You know what it looked like to me? Have you ever played Gears of War? It looked like an emergent hole, which is where like the locusts come out of in that. By the way, for those of you that didn't know, because this was pointed out in the special features at the end of the episode, the guy with the big beard right here played Tommy in the games.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, his model is even slightly the same. You can kind of see it even though he's got the giant beard. He looks pretty similar to Tommy's character model in the game. Which I was like, "Oh, cool," because I mean it just didn't click with me when I saw it cuz I only know Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie in the games, and Troy Baker, both supposed to show up towards the end of the season. And I won't ruin that part because I'm kind of interested to see what's going to go down with some of the later episodes. And I don't want you to be totally spoiled.
Right.
Trying to keep some sort of like spirit alive with this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But yeah, so that's who he is. But yeah, you're right. So they let's see. Sam is Henry's brother. So they find out that they were like up in this attic for a while, for a while, and I mean, I don't know. I guess that works. It's kind of odd that these guys are just weren't able to find them in this town. Like this, for whatever reason, this part of Kansas City that they're in feels kind of small.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that, but it's odd to me.
I think I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
What
know.
do you mean by it feels small? I guess.
Like they were hiding up in that attic, and I'm like, you didn't find them. It's just, it's like weird to me because their force seems pretty big, right? Like, don't they show this whole thing where she's basically telling all of them to like go hunt all these people down, and she was so intent on finding Henry. Like, look at, I mean, it just seems like they would have been able to find them. But I don't know. I'm not like sold on that myself totally, but like they do this whole thing. Look at this. Look how organized. They've got like these like battering rams, and they're busting in doors to go find Joel and Ellie, but he hasn't been able to. They weren't able to look up in an attic.
His comment.
Which one? Yeah, David. What do you mean it feels small? The city. Jenna does this to me all the time. Anyway, yeah, back to the hole.
I'm like, they're very well organized.
So I don't know.
Did like Fedra some of Fedra turn on itself, or did the Fireflies take over or something?
So if I remember correctly, the citizens of that QZ turn on Fedra. And if I remember correctly as well in the game, and Jenna can tell me one way or the other, it had been that way for a while because there's a lot of notes about people in the town not agreeing with what the group does. So there's actually, and I think this is, I can't remember who said it in the after the show thing, but it was talking about how like one type of like quote unquote government being taken over by another, and the one that takes over is even more brutal than the one that they originally had. And that was both an idea from the game and in this episode, which I'm totally cool with. I guess maybe we'll get to see more of that in the next one. I don't think that they established that in this episode quite as well as they think they did. And I also don't know if those interviews are post the second episode as well. Because the people that they're talking to in those interviews seem to know a lot more than they showed us in the episode.
Right.
And so it's one or the other. It's either that we haven't seen all of it yet, or that they are overemphasizing how well this was established in this episode. And I don't know yet. All right, so the emergent hole. There it is. It's breathing.
So what is this? I'm assuming obviously you know more about this than I do. Is this just where exactly what I said, where the fungus pop out of?
Yeah, they're gonna pop out of there.
And why does that happen?
Honestly, dude, I don't know. I don't even remember that.
Like the vibrations from the people?
Bro, I don't know. I don't even remember that happening in the game. They're just kind of like in places in the game.
The hive mind.
I don't remember them ever coming out of a hole like it's Gears of War. I could be wrong about that, but I do not remember that being a thing. So yeah, then we get them climbing up the stairs. Again, a lot of this I was pretty much fine with. The two of them kind of like talking to each other. He's like struggling, and she's like, "Get up." And he's like, I'm 56 years old. So it's like, yeah, that back and forth works really well. I wonder, dude, if part of the problem with how Joel and Ellie were reacting to each other early on is that there wasn't a lot of back and forth between them. It was Ellie being really snarky, and then Joel just kind of constantly looking at her like he's really mad.
Yeah.
And now that they're kind of going back and forth at each other, it just like works better. I don't know. I guess you could argue that that's obviously what they were trying to go for. But it does make her a little more annoying early on, Yeah,
it does. Oh, it definitely does.
So I don't know, man. I mean, this is almost it. Was there anything else in particular about this episode you wanted to talk about?
Not really. I mean, I like they give the kind of callback to really fast callback to his ear not working, and then kind of callback from earlier in the game to where instead of staying on guard this time, he goes to sleep because he set up the glass, and then they wake up to with guns being drawn in their face.
Yeah, pretty obvious that was going to happen, right?
Yeah, really obvious. But I mean, not really. I mean, like I said, fine episode, pretty good episode. But I don't know. I'm just not inspired. You know, I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not captivated by it yet.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much all my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm thinking next week's episode would probably be better, probably more amped up. I think you saying that like I need to be amped up. I think that's it.
I need a wild episode.
Yeah.
I need it. I need things to go crazy, and they're at the point where it's possible for them to do that. Now, I won't talk about it this week, but one of the things I'm pretty sure I'm going to be disappointed in with the show at this point is that in the game, after you're introduced to Henry and Sam, there is a section of the game that you go through that a lot of people who have played the original Last of Us consider some of the best like secondary storytelling, especially at the time, from notes. So you go in. I'm not going to give it away just in case they actually do cover some of this.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to, but just in case. You go into a specific place, and some incidents happen, and you start finding these notes written by someone, and it goes on for a couple hours of the game. That you keep finding these notes that are all written by the same person that's essentially telling you this like secondary story of like other survivors. And it's really cool. It was really engaging. I'm actually pretty close to the end of the game at this point, but it hasn't been too long since I just recently played through that section and specifically took my time through there because I wanted to find all the notes. I think a lot of people had always wished that they had done that as a story. I remember like around the time the game coming out in particular, a lot of people were like, and when Last of Us 2 got announced, a lot of people were hoping that maybe there'd be either some like DLC that would eventually touch on this and they never have. They've never gone be anything other than those notes. And I think they're going to do a disservice to the fans if there isn't anything about it. And I think even just mentioning it isn't good enough. It's one of those things that if they were going to take the time to just like dead halt the show and tell you a secondary story about survivors, this is the thing I think that most people would probably have preferred.
Right.
That would be my bet. I think giving Bill a backstory would probably be like second place for most people. I think that this specific story, about a character that you never meet, that you don't get anything more than letters about, actually fleshing that out and showing that as an example of an incident and something that happens within this world and finally bringing it to life would have been really cool. And I just don't think they're going to do it. And that honestly, it kind of sucks if that's the case. But it's just this nagging feeling, man, that it's like they're just not going to go through with something like that. Because I still think that Neil Druckmann is not exactly a fan of The Last of Us Part 1. So
probably not, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we'll see, man. I'm hopeful for next week's episode. This was still one of those things that the episode ended and I was like, "Oh, it's over?" And I was just kind of like, "Okay." It's like all right. It's like, why did we spend so much time with the lady from the camp of people that
I wonder that too. I didn't understand that part. Like why we needed her. I'm sure it's going to come up somehow, but getting her backdrop, I was just like, I don't know, it just slowed it down too much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so like you've got Henry and Sam, and then there's another group of survivors. Two more, I would say. Okay, so like two more groups of survivors that we're probably meeting this season, and they might do. I've heard they're going to dip into Last of Us 2 territory by the end of the season.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know how true that is. It seems like it might still be a bit of a rumor. But if that's the case, we are about to be on the back end of this. And I'm kind of curious how they're going to handle some of the other stuff and how you're going to take it. Because it's sort of weird because they've changed some stuff, and so because they've done that, I have these like expectations, and then like we're talking about it, and you're like, yeah, it's all right, and I'm like, yeah.
You're like, no.
It's like, I don't know. I'm like, I kind of agree with you at points, and then I'm like, but it could have been better. I was like, why did they change this? Like, anyway.
And it's funny because I'll think about it, and then I'll be like, you know what, David was right. They could have, done this better, this part better.
Yeah, and there's stuff that I've thought about too, and I just, again, I like I said, I've stayed personally in the way that I've thought about the show, and I think even the way that it's played out, there's a lot that's really good. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of like, well, those were odd decisions that you made, some of them borderline on bad. And then there's some stuff that I'm just kind of indifferent about, and like, I don't know, like, I get it, but it's also not really the way that I would have done that, you know?
Right,
It's that kind of thing.